In just 72 seconds, $4.7 million in hidden transactions. Congressman Moskowitz didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam papers. He simply opened a manila folder. Cameras zoomed closer. The Senate chamber fell silent. What did Moskowitz reveal that made the most powerful law enforcement nominee in America's face drain of all color? At exactly 2:47 p.m. on Tuesday, Kash Patel walked into the Senate Judiciary Committee, hearing like a man who owned every secret in Washington. His Navy suit pressed to perfection, FBI badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, stack of prepared responses arranged neatly before him. 3 months of confirmation prep had led to this moment. He was 72 minutes away from becoming FBI director. Congressman Moskowitz sat like a prosecutor who had seen too many cover-ups. His Democratic colleague had spent weeks preparing softball questions about Patel's qualifications, but Moskowitz had different plans. Hidden in his leather briefcase sat photocopies of financial records that would change everything. Records that showed wire transfers, offshore accounts, names that should never have been buried. Mr. Patel, Moskowitz began, his voice cutting through the ceremonial pleasantries. You've spoken extensively about transparency in law enforcement. Patel's hands rested confidently on the mahogany table. Absolutely, Congressman. The American people deserve truth. Good, because I have some questions about your relationship with certain financial institutions. Moskowitz opened the manila folder, specifically accounts linked to Jeffrey Epstein's estate. The chamber temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Senator Chuck Grassley leaned forward. C-SPAN cameras captured every micro-expression. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. Moskowitz held up a bank statement. I'm stating facts. Between March 2021 and August 2023, you received exactly $4.7 million through a series of shell companies. Companies that traced back to Epstein's liquidated assets. Patel's knuckles whitened as he gripped his prepared notes. That's completely fabricated. Is it? Moskowitz's voice remained deadly calm. Because I have the SWIFT codes right here. Chase Bank. Account ending in 70743. Ring any bells? At exactly 2:48 p.m. and 23 seconds, something shifted in Patel's eyes. The confidence cracked. His prepared talking points suddenly felt worthless against the paper trail Moskowitz had assembled. Congressman, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Moskowitz interrupted, is how someone who took hush money from a pedophile's estate thought they could become FBI director. The chamber erupted. Senator Ted Cruz dropped his pen. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's mouth fell open. Even the stenographer paused mid-keystroke. Fox News would later claim their feed mysteriously cut for 47 seconds during this exact moment. Patel's voice cracked as he fought for composure. These are serious allegations. They're not allegations, they're bank records. Moskowitz held up a second document. Here's the wire transfer confirmation. $1.2 million, March 15, 2021. Memo line reads, Consulting Services, Project Black Book. Want to explain what kind of consulting you did for Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team? The blood drained from Patel's face. His FBI badge suddenly felt heavy against his chest. 3 rows behind him, his wife closed her eyes and gripped her purse strap so tightly her knuckles went white. The confirmation hearing that was supposed to be a victory lap had become a public execution. Behind the press gallery, CNN's Anderson Cooper frantically texted his producers, breaking story, cancel Timelights lineup. MSNBC and Fox News anchors were already being pulled into emergency editorial meetings. This wasn't just political theater, this was a career-ending catastrophe playing out in real time. At exactly 2:49 p.m. and 12 seconds, Patel made the mistake that ended his career. "I was never involved in any cover-up." "Nobody said cover-up." Moskowitz smiled coldly. Interesting word choice, though. The chamber fell silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Patel realized what he'd just done. In trying to deny something that hadn't been explicitly stated, he'd confirmed it. Senator Lindsey Graham shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This wasn't going according to the Republican talking points. Bind Patel, his legal advisor, frantically scribbled notes, trying to find an exit strategy from this catastrophe. "Let me be more specific," Moskowitz continued, his voice gaining momentum. "On April 3, 2022, you personally met with Maxwell's attorney, Laura Menninger, at the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., room 847. The meeting lasted exactly 2 hours and 17. Patel's hands began to tremble. How could Moskowitz possibly know these details? The meeting was off the books. No phones, cash payment for the room. Yet here was this congressman reading from what looked like a surveillance report. "You're fishing," Patel stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Moskowitz opened a second folder, this one thicker. "Because I also have photographs, hotel security footage, credit card receipts from the restaurant downstairs where you celebrated with a $300 bottle of champagne afterward." The color drained from Patel's face completely now. Senator Amy Klobuchar leaned forward. Her prosecutor instincts activated. The Republican senators who had been ready to fast-track this confirmation were now calculating political damage. Within 48 hours of that meeting, Moskowitz pressed on, another $2.1 million appeared in your account. This time, through a Cayman Islands shell company called Justice Consulting LLC, a company that didn't exist until the day before the transfer. Patel tried to reach for his water glass, but his hand shook so violently he knocked it over. The clear liquid spread across his prepared notes, smearing the ink, a perfect metaphor for his dissolving career. "I want to remind the nominee," Senator Dick Durbin interjected, "that lying to Congress is a federal crime. Perjury carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison." The weight of those words settled over Patel like a shroud. 5 years in federal prison. The same system he'd hoped to lead would now be prosecuting him. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the chamber. "Mr. Patel," Moskowitz's voice cut through the silence, "would you like to revise any of your previous statements?" This was it. The moment of truth. Patel could continue lying and face perjury charges, or he could come clean and watch his FBI dreams evaporate on live television. Neither option led anywhere good. I need to consult with my attorney," Patel whispered. "That's not how confirmation hearings work," Senator Ted Cruz surprisingly chimed in. Even Cruz, known for defending controversial nominees, couldn't stomach this level of corruption. "You answer the questions now, under oath." The C-SPAN cameras captured every bead of sweat on Patel's forehead. Social media was already ablaze. Patel meltdown started trending alongside Epstein cover-up. Political commentators were scrambling to book emergency television segments. Back in the hearing room, Moskowitz wasn't done. He had one final bomb to drop. "Let me ask you about one more payment, Mr. Patel. December 15th, 2023, $1.14 million. Same day the FBI officially closed its investigation into 17 unnamed Epstein associates. Coincidence?" Patel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His political career was being executed in real time, broadcast live to millions of Americans. The man who had promised to restore integrity to the FBI was revealed as just another swamp creature, bought and paid for by the very predators he was supposed to investigate. In the gallery, families of trafficking victims watched in stunned silence. Virginia Giuffre's attorney leaned forward, taking notes. This was the moment they'd waited years for: public accountability for those who buried their pain for profit. The silence stretched for 12 excruciating seconds. Patel's FBI dreams weren't just ending, they were being cremated on live television. His prepared sound bites about fighting crime suddenly rang hollow when he was the criminal in the room. Patel finally whispered, his voice barely audible over the chamber's ventilation system. "I need to speak with counsel." "Too late for that," Moskowitz replied, his voice carrying the weight of moral authority. The victims needed counsel. The survivors needed justice. All they got was your silence, purchased with dirty money. Senator Mazie Hirono, typically soft-spoken, couldn't contain herself. "This is exactly why we need thorough vetting. This nominee is compromised beyond redemption." The Republican senators, who moments earlier were prepared to rubber stamp this nomination, now sat in stunned calculation. How do you defend the indefensible? How do you spin corruption this blatant? Political consultants across Washington were already updating their crisis management playbooks. Moskowitz leaned back in his chair. "For the record, Mr. Patel, can you explain why you personally intervened to seal 87 pages of FBI evidence related to Epstein's client list?" That's classified." "Not anymore." Moskowitz held up a declassified memo. "This document shows you personally ordered the evidence locker sealed permanently 3 days after receiving your first payment." Senator Dick Durbin's voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Patel, do you need a moment consult with counsel?" But Patel wasn't listening. His mind was racing through exit strategies. Private sector jobs, book deals, anything but this public humiliation. The man who had dreamed of running the FBI was watching his reputation disintegrate in real time. Twitter exploded. Until Epstein, files began trending within minutes. CNN broke into regular programming. The hashtag Blood Money reached 2.3 million mentions in the first hour. In the chamber's press section, veteran Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward furiously scribbled notes. This was Watergate-level corruption unfolding before his eyes. Capitol Hill staffers abandoned their posts to crowd around television screens in break rooms across the building. Moskowitz wasn't finished. "The American people deserve to know, how many other victims' files have you buried? How many other predators have you protected?" "I protected no one." Patel's voice was barely a whisper now. "Except your bank account." Moskowitz closed the folder with theatrical precision. "I have no further question." At exactly 2:50 p.m., Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called for an immediate recess. Patel sat frozen in his chair as reporters swarmed the chamber. His phone buzzed with texts from Trump's inner circle, emergency damage control meetings, legal consultations. None of it mattered, but the damage was already spreading beyond the Senate chamber. Within minutes, FBI field offices across the country were receiving calls from agents demanding answers. How deep did this corruption go? Who else knew about the payments? The very organization Patel hoped to lead was now questioning his integrity. Outside the Capitol building, protesters had already gathered. Victims' rights advocates held signs reading "Justice for Epstein's victims" and "No corrupt cops." The crowd swelled from dozens to hundreds as news of the hearings spread through social media. Back inside, Republican senators huddled in emergency session. Senator John Cornyn was overheard saying, "We can't defend this. It's political suicide." Even Trump's most loyal allies knew this nomination was dead on arrival. Moskowitz, meanwhile, sat calmly reviewing his notes. 23 months of investigation had led to this moment. Financial analysts, former FBI agents, investigative journalists, all had contributed pieces to this devastating puzzle. The congressman from Florida had built an airtight case that would be studied in political science classes for decades. By 4:30 p.m., Patel's legal team had drafted 3 different withdrawal letters. By 5:15 p.m., they'd settled on the shortest version. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I respectfully withdraw my nomination for FBI director. No explanations, no denials, just a quiet retreat from public life. The confirmation vote that was scheduled for Friday was quietly canceled. By 6 p.m., Patel's withdrawal letter was trending on social media. By 8 p.m., the FBI released a statement distancing themselves from his nomination. That evening, as Washington processed the day's revelations, Moskowitz appeared on every major news network. His message was consistent. This isn't about politics. It's about protecting the integrity of our justice system. The man who had promised to drain the swamp had become its latest casualty. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a badge or a subpoena. It's a bank statement revealed at exactly the right moment. What happens when someone who built their career on secrecy gets exposed by their own greed? Can patriotism survive when its defenders are bought and paid for? Moskowitz proved that in Washington, the truth isn't buried forever. It's just waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up. If this story exposed the corruption hiding in plain sight, don't just read and forget. Share this truth. The next cover-up might involve your family's safety, because when the people sworn to protect us are protecting predators instead, who's really keeping us safe? What would you do if you discovered evidence this explosive about someone in power? The comment section is waiting for your answer.